buy gold, buy silver, buy rare earths, buy copper, buy nickel, buy everything that we work in, Trey, because it's all valued in the US dollar. It's all going up based on currencies and demand. This is going to be a big party.
Greetings and welcome to our Wealthion show. My name's Trey Reik of Bristol Gold Group, and we're checking in today with Dave Wargo, CEO and head of investment banking at SCP Resource Finance, independent merchant bank with offices in Toronto and London. Dave, thanks for being available to chat with us today.
No problem, Trey. No problem.
The primary reason we asked you to join us is to get your impressions, first as they may be, on the surprising talks in the U.S. or surprising progress in the U.S.-China trade talks this past weekend in Switzerland. So I guess the first thing and what the impacts may be on the rare earth market. So my first question is, what did you make of the talks themselves? Do you detect some sincerity on both sides?
Yeah, I do. I mean, they're both staring down the end of a gun, basically. Like, they're both so dependent on one another that, kind of calmer heads have to prevail, and they have to be pragmatic about things. And what I said in my previous podcast with Trey, I think that the next generation IP will stay at home. And then the basic manufacturing that's basically already set up, like sunset industries, like auto parts, toys. I mean, I really don't think those types of jobs are going to come back. So I think there is sincerity, but I think there's been so much damage done in the relationship, and I think the American kind of thinking is they want to be independent in certain industry groups, right? So I think the negotiations are good in the sense it settles down the markets. It gives them 90 days to actually get to a solution. Whether they get to one or not, that's a different story. But I do think this is a great start. Both countries need one another, and the world needs them to be cooperating, because they're the two biggest dogs in the sandbox, right? And if they're not getting along, it doesn't matter what Canada does. It doesn't matter what Mexico does, and to a lesser extent, it doesn't matter what Europe's doing. Although the biggest beneficiary of all this stuff is Europe so far, right? So they're doing well. So yeah, I think there's sincerity. I do think that this is going to be a business relationship. It's not going to be a friendly relationship. It's only, if you look at what Trump's done with his administration, they're all China hawks, and his mandate is to bring as much back home as possible. So hopefully they do it in a very polite way. That's all we can hope for, right?
I hope you're enjoying my conversation with Dave Wargo, but for those who are interested in learning more about the rare earths space, I wanted to mention that Wealthion and SCP have produced a white paper on rare earth metals, which can be received by clicking on the link in the description below. Right. I noticed in the wake of the talks, I think yesterday or the day before, there were reports that China has lifted export restrictions or granted export permits to 4 rare earth magnet manufacturers so far, just for clients of all places in Vietnam and Europe, with specific mention of Volkswagen. So what do you make of that? Is there some particular reason they would choose those 2 countries? And does that imply we have more coming? What do you think?
Well, I mean, Vietnam, they'll probably put downstream technology in their country, right? Is my guess, because Vietnam has ionic clay deposits, right? And then when you're saying you're going to supply Volkswagen, you're basically saying you're supplying the German state, because Volkswagen is Latin for the German state. And so I think that's a bit of leverage, right? It's like, hey, you guys don't want to play fair in the sandbox. We'll give it all to the Europeans, and it gives the Chinese more leverage in the negotiations, right?
Right.
So it's a brilliant move.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, you see, this is going to be the most. This is going to be the most fascinating set of negotiations the world has seen in a very long time. Right. It's just I find it fascinating. It's an inflection point. Like it truly is an inflection point in the way the world's going to go forward, right? So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, it'll be fascinating to watch these negotiations and the game theory and all that goes behind it.
Mhm.
And let's just hope it works out for the best.
Right. Do you think the rare earth stance that China is taking, what is their ultimate aim? Is it just negotiating leverage, or do you think there's something more sinister?
It's leverage in the negotiations. They're the only ones that make it, basically, in industrial amounts. So it's just leverage in negotiations because these magnets are so important to the military complex,
Mhm.
and it's so important to the whole new economy that's evolving with the robotics and whatnot. So these magnets right now have a tremendous amount of leverage. It's kind of like the leverage the US has with AI and what they did with Nvidia going into Saudi Arabia. Like everybody wants that technology. The Americans have actually contained it for the most part.
Mhm.
And that gives them leverage in going into different countries. So the Chinese are doing the same thing with the rare earths. I think that's a good comparable, in my opinion.
Okay.
So just leverage.
All right. And after Trump's trip to Saudi Arabia, I saw an announcement that U.S. producer MP Materials signed a MOU with Saudi Arabia's, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce this, their flagship,
Added. Yeah.
Madden,
Yeah.
to jointly develop a rare earth supply chain in Saudi Arabia, including mining, separation, refining, magnets. So it, I know that you and I have talked in the past about Ukraine, and I know your view is there's not a lot of rare earth metals in Ukraine. How would we know, and are there, and how is Saudi Arabia endowed with this stuff?
I have not heard of the Saudis having a rare earth deposit, but that doesn't mean they don't have one because it's kind of a very secretive state in a way.
Hmm.
They do have good hard rock deposits there.
Hmm.
But I could do a bit of work to find out if they have a rare earth deposit itself. If they do, then what they're trying to do makes sense. To a degree. Molly Corp, I really don't know what the skill set is outside of producing a rare earth concentrate. I'm sure there are people in the company that can take things further downstream, but they haven't done it yet. So it's a nice press release, right?
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
sounds good. It's just building this bridge with the Saudis, which is fascinating. There's always been a strong relationship, obviously, because of the oil, but they're I guess it's just a way to bring the two countries together. And it's also a message maybe to the Chinese too. Like we've got the biggest oil producer in the world, and we're going to do rare earths with them too. And they can turn off the faucet maybe if you go against them, type of thing. I don't know. I mean, just throwing
Hmm.
stuff out there. So I think it's more of a press release, and what it entails is probably about 10 years of development, maybe 15 years. So by that time, there probably isn't development because the game in this space is over in 24 months, in my opinion,
Hmm.
at the outside.
Hmm.
So,
And by development, you mean mine development.
yeah, mine development. And if they want to go downstream, like, there's a whole skill set, countercurrent solvent extraction to produce a separated rare earth is, it's not like putting, Lego together. There's a lot of IP and there's a lot of human capital skill set that's required, right? And when all you do is pump oil and gas your whole life, you don't have the skill set. So this is another thing that the West, and now it's the Middle East,
Hmm.
it's all human capital constrained, right? So it'll take time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But not to beat it into the ground, you've never in the past been aware that Saudi Arabia has particular mineral resources of any type, right?
No, they've got, well, obviously oil and gas. They have very good copper and gold in the basin, right? It's a big
Hmm.
basin. So the outer edges of the basin, you've got these beautiful copper, gold.
Hmm.
Who went in there? I think it was Equinox went in there that um back in like 2011. They bought I forget the name of the mine, but it was a good mine, and
Hmm.
they did a great job purchasing it. And then Barrick ended up buying Equinox, and
Hmm.
I do believe that mine. Now I don't follow Barrick, so it could be wrong.
Hmm.
I haven't followed that mine itself either, but I'm pretty sure it's in production and it's a very good mine. So they have good hard rock assets. I just don't know about rare earths, and if they have one, it's not going to be ionic, that's for sure. So, because there's no water there, it's lots of heat. But so it would be a conventional hard rock basanesite or monazite, and that's not the way the world's going. And there's more than enough of that type of material coming out of Australia, coming out of Brazil,
Mhm.
will come out of Brazil, and a lot of it will come out of Mountain Pass too, right? So
Mhm.
I don't, I think it's more pomp and circumstance than anything
Okay.
else. Yeah, I think. I don't know.
Okay. And speaking of pomp and circumstance, back in late April, President Trump signed an executive order under the auspices of the Deep Seabed Hard Minerals Act of 1980 to promote mining of polymetallic nodules of
Yeah,
critical minerals and metals such as cobalt, nickel, and manganese.
yeah.
And the EO applies to the continental shelf as well as international waters. China promptly objected and vociferously stated their opinions. Is this just another PR thing from Trump, or is the stuff out there and can it be mined profitably?
Well, there's probably more deposits under the ocean floor than we know, right?
Uh-huh.
More under the ocean than there is above surface. But let's face it. I mean, cobalt. Just go to the Congo. They're swimming in it. Call up Glencore. They probably have about 20 bonded warehouses full of the stuff that they don't
Uh-huh.
tell anybody about. Cobalt's not. I mean, it's critical. I don't know. You're not going to mine the seafloor for cobalt. The manganese nodules he was talking about. There's more than enough of that stuff up on the surface. Nickel, we're swimming in it. The Indonesians own that market now in 3 years. Incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more. I think it's just more the American state basically saying we're very serious about hard rock mining, and we'll even go to the ocean floor. But you can tell Donald he's time. He doesn't have to do that right away. There's a lot above ground. There's a lot of good copper in Arizona. There's lots of great gold in California. Let's just take the overburden of all the permitting, and the permitting has to be fixed. That's where the focus should be, not mining the seafloor.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about it, in China, they'll build a mine in a week. I'm being facetious, but on a relative basis to the West, they'll have theirs depleted by the time we push go on ours, if we were to do equal mines, right? Because they just get to work. We follow rules for the most part, but those rules have to be streamlined because it encumbers the process. And you can even argue at times that the mining space is not even an asset class, because as the commodity rolls, as you're building your mine, there's no capital for it, right? So I think
There's an
the
Arizona copper deposit that's been
resolution
permitting for 20 years, right? Or 25 years?
that's gonna. I think the Donald's gonna. I think they're fast tracking that one. That is truly a world class deposit. It's in a red state.
Tell us about it.
Well, I don't know a lot about it. What I have read about it, I read about all the encumbrances. It's an RTZ mine.
Mm-hmm.
I think, now don't quote me on this, I think it would supply 25% of the total demand of the US.
Wow.
Don't
Mm-hmm.
quote me on that, but I think that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a serious lever now, right? And that'll impact the international copper price. And the way I look at the way the Americans will approach this space, and I'm actually excited for it because that means that Canada can develop it. But if you look at oil and gas as your proxy, what did the Americans do? The Americans went around the world with the best IP technology, the best reservoir engineers, the best everything in the oil gas space, and they just pumped it. They didn't care who bought it, they didn't care where it went. They looked at the oil market as it's just a giant pool. Pull it in, put the oil into the pool. Everybody puts their straw. Like, the Russians will put it in, the Chinese, the Americans, and you get the oil price down, right? That's why OPEC came in, because they were just flooding the market. And I think that's what's going to happen on the hard rock space, because, as I said before, the genie's out of the bottle. All this stuff in the West, if we are going to go away from the East, is going to have to be developed. And you're going to have to develop probably more. And this is where the argument's going to come between what the government wants and what the mining company wants, because the mining companies want to have the most margin per unit, right? And the governments are going to want the least amount of margin at the government level, at the company level, so that the consumer and the car companies have the cheapest inputs to their value added products, and the consumer, will benefit from that. So there is going to be a philosophical uh, argument between a mining company and the state. And one thing that worries me about that is the state will always win. And if you look at around the world, all the major super oil giant deposits, and Oxy and Chevron and Exxon, that's all Latin for the U.S. government. I'm sorry, right? So
Mhm.
you look around the world. Where was I going? Every major oil deposit was basically nationalized, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And if it wasn't nationalized, it was controlled by the big five in the US. And I think that is a trend that will probably get going in the hard rock space because, you know, SCP Resource Finance is not going to hold the US government over a barrel like, I've got the rare earths, you can't have them unless they give them to me. So
Right.
I think you're going to see a tremendous amount of development, a tremendous amount of capital go on the ground. And you're going to see minerals coming out from all over the place now because it's replacing oil. And you look at oil, oil's below $60, it's going below 50.
Mhm.
And I may even make a bet with somebody that's going below 40.
Really.
Oh, we're swimming in the stuff. They broke OPEC, like Angola left.
Mhm.
Funny enough, 6 weeks after they did the Libido corridor to take all those minerals out of the Congo, the American government gave them that. They could have probably gone around if they wanted. It's the most efficient way. But 6 weeks later, Angola leaves OPEC plus. So I mean that's a horse trade. That wasn't a coincidence. So OPEC is disintegrating, I think,
Mhm.
because the big guys can ratchet back supply, the smaller guys can't,
Right.
right? And the smaller guys, the marginal player will actually erode the leverage along with the battery. And so, the leverage will come into the hard rock space after that, right? It has to.
Mm. Have
So
you done any work on Northern Dynasty?
the one up in Alaska,
Yeah.
yeah, well, I mean, it's the story that always comes up. It's a beautiful deposit, the Pebble deposit. It's beautiful. It's, as Donald would say, it's beautiful. It's world class. It's beautiful. It is beautiful.
Matt.
It's also in the most beautiful part of the world, right? Like I've never been up there, but everything you hear about it, it's just God's country. And then Alaska will never get over the Exxon Valdez, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
the impression that left on that state and the country and the continent as a whole, that just puts up the barriers to entry. And you know what? There's a lot of minerals outside of Pebble that we can take first. And, when we're the last people on Earth and we need that incremental pound of copper and we've taken it from everywhere else, let's go develop that one. Like, they're not going to want to hear that, but, I like development, but I also like, environmental
How
things.
about Donlin?
Pardon me?
We got Donlin too, right? Isn't that a big one?
Yeah, so they're all big. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't really pay attention to that end of the market, so I can't really comment on it. But like
Got it.
the big projects will get developed now, and the one thing that might get Pebble going is there's a lot of investment in from the west going up into the Arctic region, into Alaska, into Northwest Territories,
Mhm.
and it's all about the Russians and the Chinese coming over the top, so they want to develop this up there. So maybe that catalyst gets Pebble going. And if they're going to build Pebble, you would have to do it in a way that would be the safest possible way because you don't want anything to have. It's just apparently just a spectacular, it's heaven on earth. So
Yeah.
got to be careful.
I've actually stood there, and I'll tell you, you wouldn't confuse it with the Florida Intercoastal Waterway. I mean,
Just
there's so much metal in the ground, nothing grows. I mean, there's no trees, there's nothing above 6 inches. It's
just
basically
loading.
a big
Yeah.
hot hunk of cotton.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some gold. There's a lot of goodies in there.
No.
We've been talking about this like my whole career in the capital markets, and it predates me, right? It's like these deposits, they bump along, and then all of a sudden they become something. Like
Right.
Kabanga in Tanzania, we floated on the New York Stock Exchange, I think 3 years ago.
Hmm.
But that was with Glencore and Barrick, and like it's been with, I think it was like 28, 30 years. I'm not sure exactly the time frame, but 20 to 30 years before they actually got their first dollar of capital, right?
Hmm.
which is, and the shame of that is, the Indonesians come online and they swamp the market with laterite nickel, and it's just like, here we go.
Hmm.
So anyway,
Well, thanks for your time. I would ask you in closing, in the last month, is there anything that's caught your eye in the mining space that you think we should be focused on?
well, I'm biased. I think, I think the Ukraine war will get settled out. I think I
Hmm.
said that before. So I think that'll hit gold a bit. I do like gold long term. I think silver is probably the metal that outperforms gold because it's got an industrial element to it. And if we settle down the Ukraine and the trade war, you know, it's not going to get settled quickly. But if it just settles down, then, silver is an industrial metal as well as the poor man's store of value. So I like silver probably right now better than gold.
Hmm.
And I love the rare space because, you know, I can't say it enough. Even with a trade agreement between the two countries, America is going to go the West, and America leads the West. So America and the West will go full steam ahead to become self-sufficient. They will never, you know, be at the mercy of another state, right?
Yeah.
And right now, with 30 years of offshoring, there's a lot of vulnerabilities within the supply chain. And I think those vulnerabilities will get lined out over the next decade. I think it's going to take that long. And they'll be self-sufficient. Then we'll see really what happens, right? Because that's when the real fun starts,
And a part of your Ukraine thesis is rebuilding the country and demand for base metals as well, right?
Oh, 100. There's $1 trillion of capital plus going into that country.
Hmm.
Um, And so $1 trillion, that's a lot of capex. There's a lot of fees running around there. So there's just going to be this party going into the Ukraine. And I think, what the US is doing, they're slowly bringing down their dollar. It's been pretty fast, but they're going to slow that down a bit, but it's going to continue to depreciate against other currencies.
Hmm.
And you saw how the Chinese were really good. They lowered their lending rates and they lowered their interbank rate, right? So they're sewering their RMB too. So it's a race to the bottom. When I worked in China, the RMB was 8.28 to $1. That was in 2005. The economy's gone up 5 times since then, five
Hmm.
times.
Hmm.
And the renminbi is approaching 8.28 to the US dollar. It doesn't make any sense, right? So it's a currency war. The Americans, I think, are going to let their currency kind of go a bit lower, and they want to stimulate exports. And I've read some articles about how they think the reserve currency has what's cost them their industrial base, which is true because their currency's so high, nobody can afford their goods, so it goes offshore. So if that's the thinking, then take that to the bank.
Right.
Okay. And buy gold, buy silver, buy rare earths, buy copper, buy nickel, buy everything that we work in, Trey, because
Hmm.
it's all valued in the US dollar. It's all going up based on currencies
Hmm.
and demand. This is going to be a big party. When it gets going, it's going to just go. And it's going to make that last cycle of 2005 to outside of that 4 5 month window of '08, which, that was a scary moment. The whole system was done. Outside of that 4 to 5 months, you had from 2005 to the end of to mid 2011, and the market went from like 0 to 100. Like it was just everything just went. And I think we're going to get that moment again, but it's going to be on steroids. It's going to make '05 to 2011 look like nothing
Yeah.
because you're getting the big nation states involved now, right?
Right.
And no, that's where the capital is. And when you're transitioning to a whole new economy, then you're going to be pulling so much raw material into it. It's the perfect storm.
Hmm.
It really is. Like it's the best industry to be in. And you know why I know it's the best industry to be in,
When
Trey?
you say industry, you mean mining generally.
Mining generally, yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'll tell you this. I watch CNBC. I think it's a great show because it gives you the breadth of the American retail investor, and I also think that they actually are a mouthpiece for things, and they plant seeds into the market and give you an idea where things might go.
Hmm.
So I was watching this morning over a coffee, and there's this, one of the reporters. She's underground. She's got the hat on with the light, And I'm like, oh my God. She's at the
Uh-oh.
King Cop mine in Utah. And I'm like, CNBC's airing this prime time. So you know what it's like in America, like when you guys get onto something and you don't just put one into it, you put 100 into it, right?
Right.
And so once you wake up to this trade, the multiples in the space with the Americans like fully focused like they would have been on the oil and gas space, which I think is going to happen. The multiples of these companies are just going to go through the roof because we're starting at nothing, right?
And there's not many of them.
No, there isn't, right? But there's going to be a ton of capital going into the space. There'll be a lot of discoveries that actually have already been made that come into fruition. So the amount of capital that's going to flow in the space is just going to make every other industry look like nothing, right? It will be because the tech space had its run, the Mag 7, whatever you want to call it. It was those 10 companies, what they had the market cap the size of US GDP almost, and they don't like monopolies in America. I'm sorry. That's a monopoly. So they're out. And the mining industries and the hard rock industries and the blue collar industries are coming back, and it's great, man, because that's the heartbeat of any economy. That's the heartbeat of any culture, is having a robust middle class, right? And this is what we're going to bring back. So I'm all for it, and it's going to be fun. And I think that this go around is, I don't know, strap on the boots, my friend, because it's going to be party time. I'll tell you that.
And then we can start thinking about retirement.
Well, yeah, I don't know about that. I think we'll all be carried out in a box, where this is in our blood tray.
I still had facial tics from 2011, 12. That was a rugged time.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean,
all right. Well, that's a good note to end on, Dave. Thank you.
Anytime, Trey.